everybody. Welcome to the world's greatest Bronze Age Spider-Man podcast. Here comes the Spider-Cast. I'm your co-host, Mike L., and as always, I'm joined by
Joshua Mervell. Today, we're going to be taking a look at some of the Spider-Man crossovers from the late 1980s.
That's right. Fun stuff here. And we have G.I. Jolie back with us. G.I. Jolie, thanks
Hello.
Woo! Thanks for joining us. This is a big one.
Yay. Okay.
Thanks for coming back. Also, Bex Luthor.
I'm here. Hello. What's up? It's me.
Yeah. So these two special guests tend to miss episodes, but there's no way they're missing this one, and that's because we've got our special guest, Messiah Complex, a.k.a. Jeff McDonald, with us.
That is 100% not the reason they're not missing this one, but hi, everybody.
Did you listen to the last podcast? Because it kind of is.
I listened to the last two, actually.
Ooh.
I know. I had to do my homework, so.
There's two more coming, and because we do really far ahead, and you'll see what we're talking about later. But anyway.
That's fair.
So
Yeah, it's like, what are you talking about? We don't miss that many episodes.
I kid.
Just the ones that stuck.
So anyway,
it's not like people have like full-time jobs and do other podcasts and stuff like that.
I don't
have an excuse. I do not.
I have only 3 or 4 podcasts besides this one. But anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, so Jeff, we have known you, I don't know how many years now, but we met you through cosplay. You're a cosplayer, known as Messiah Complex, right?
Yep.
For those that are interested, can you tell us, or tell the listeners, kind of like who you are, where they can find you, and what you do, basically?
Yeah, so pretty much across all social media, you can find me at Messiah Complex Cosplay. There is a website, www.messiahcomplexcosplay.com, but it's just a placeholder right now. There's some images there, but we're still working on it. But the domain is there. And I dress up like a nerd on weekends for parties and events, and now just starting back up again, Comic-Cons. In 2 weeks, Fan Expo lands in Toronto from October 22nd to 24th. So I will be there for that event all 3 days and dressing up all 3 days. And we're going to do some cool photo shoots, and we're going to drink a lot and just going to have a great old time. So that's it, man. And then, I got my own weekly podcast. We just changed the name from Geeks of the Round Table to Geek Boutique. And every week we just talk about, we pick a pop culture topic to talk about. And sometimes we'll just have a weekly roundup of sort of what the pop culture news has been. This week we're talking Star Trek because this 90-year-old dude went to space, and we've got to talk about it. So,
Yes, he did. He did. Came back safely. Yeah. Now, did you start this podcast before or during the pandemic?
We're on episode, I want to say 7 or 8-ish.
Oh, okay.
We're in around there. Yeah. So we've only just started it. It was my good friend, J.S. Belanger is the one who is leading the charge on that. And Jolie has been good enough to be a guest on that podcast. We had a Harry Potter episode. So we brought in Jolie and her sister Julie. And we had a great conversation of all things Potter. So it was awesome.
That's great.
Julie's like a way bigger Harry Potter freak. So I had to have her on there too.
You know what you were, though? You were our moral center, because every time we kind of started talking about, I know. For those of you that know her, you're like, what? But every time we started talking about some of the more controversial aspects of Potter, like J.K. Rowling and Johnny Depp, you were there to kind of keep us all in check and make sure we weren't stepping on our toes too much. So thank you for that. And it was amazing.
Oh. Well, you're welcome. I'm really glad to have been on it. I did want to say you guys should really have Becca on there. For sure.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe you should have a Spider-Man episode.
I'll be on any podcast. I got nothing going on. I love talking about stuff that I
will reach out, Becca. We'll get you on there for sure. We're always looking for new guests.
So that's awesome. I love Harry Potter. I also love comic books. Now I notice in the background, Jeff, you'd never know it by talking to me, but I noticed in the background, Jeff, I see 2 posters here. I see Batman and Superman.
That's right.
And so those are 2 of my 3 favorite characters. My number 1 is Superman. My number 2 is Spidey. So do you want to tell us your background with comic books? Have you read them your whole life, or what's up?
I didn't start collecting until the 90s, so probably 90-ish or 91. So I was around for, Death of Superman, Nightfall, Marvel versus DC, Kingdom Come, those events, and the Birth of Image comics. I was around for that. I've got most of the Spawn run. So yeah, the sort of the glory days, when X-Men #1, the 4 million prints of that comic or whatever ridiculous number it was. So that's when I was collecting. I probably still have, around 2,000 comics kicking around here in the basement. Mostly collecting dust. Every now and then I'll pull out our series run and I'll start reading away. But I was a little bit more into DC than into Marvel.
Sure.
The Marvel stuff was great because it was relatable, but sometimes I just want some fun escapism, and I found DC was a little bit better at that. So I stuck mostly with DC, but I did collect some Marvel titles too, and I've always been a big fan of the different media, the cartoons, the movies, that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
And I think you mentioned Spider-Man, but have you always been a Spider-Man fan?
I have. I didn't collect Spider-Man or X-Men back in the day because I was poor and I couldn't afford to collect all the Spider titles or all the X-Men titles, and they routinely ran arcs through all the different books at the same time. So I did collect books that were typically from the Marvel side. I collected Silver Surfer. I collected Incredible Hulk. Usually storylines that stayed kind of within one book and such. But I've always been a Spider-Man fan. Of course, the classic '60s cartoon, all the different cartoon iterations, all the Raimi films. I even love the Garfield films. I love the current Holland films. So yeah, I mean, I'm a big Spider-Man fan. But my Spider-Man comic knowledge, as far as physically reading comics from this era, yeah, pretty weak. Not gonna lie.
Interesting. Okay. Now, quick question from my own personal interest: are you a fan of Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, the cartoon?
Which one is that?
That's the one where he's roommates with Iceman and Firestar. No?
I don't know that I'm familiar with that one. I'm gonna have to check that one out.
You're all
laughing. Is it super bad or what's going on?
Mike asks this question to like every date he's ever had, and if they say, "What are you talking about?" He just gets up and leaves.
That's my opening line. Yeah. Exactly.
But not gonna waste my time here.
But anyway, okay, so this is an odd place to come in, I guess, for Spider-Man comics. This is mid to late 80s, 87. We've got a crossover with Power Pack, and then we have a Spider-Man vs. Wolverine special, which is going to take a lot of explanation before we even get to that review, but stick with us. First, we're going to talk about Power Pack, and this is obviously during the period where Spider-Man had his black costume. Are you familiar with the story about the black costume, Jeff?
I am, yes, with before it goes to Eddie Brock, because we're just about a year or two before McFarlane?
Yes. Now, yeah, and just so you know, this is actually not the alien costume. This is the cloth reproduction of the alien costume. So gotcha. So this is the second black costume. And you've actually decided to volunteer to summarize this issue. You only have to summarize it a couple minutes. Basically, just tell the listeners roughly what happened in this story. Power Pack number 33.
So Power Pack 33, you start off with Sunspot and Warlock. They're just having a conversation, and Sunspot's a little down on his heroics as of late, and they witness the Vulture, a classic Spider-Man villain, robbing an armored car. Him and Warlock tear off after the Vulture, and Warlock transforms himself into a spaceship. As they catch up to him, young Franklin Richards, the son of Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Girl, has a vision of Warlock as a spaceship going across the sky and thinks it's a Snark ship. The Snarks are a classic villain that the Power Pack have been fighting, I think, pretty much since the get-go. Franklin, in his dream form, I guess like an astral projection, goes to the Power Children, the other four of them that make up the Power Pack, and tell them that he's seen some Snarks. The kids make up an excuse to their parents, tell them they're going to bed. They set up a dummy in the beds, and then they suit up and head out, hoping to find the Snark ship, which again, in this case, was Warlock transformed the whole time. The kids hit Sunspot and Warlock, and then, of course, introductions are in order. Sunspot and Warlock let the kids know that they were chasing after Vulture when suddenly there's a car crash, and the car is in need of repair. So throughout the issue so far, Sunspot's been pretty down in his abilities as a hero. He's having a hard time finding his place in the New Mutants, so he decides to fix the car for them, and the car speeds away. And then they realize that the car actually had the bad guys in it. So they go chasing after the car, catch the car, but Sunspot is still thinking that he's not a very good hero. Him and Warlock take off, And they decide they're going to try to find somebody else to get into a scrap with. They think they found a villain, and they jump him, and it turns out it's your pal and mine, your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. And then the Power Pack show up as well, and Spidey gives a little pep talk to Sunspot as he's once again getting down on himself. There's even a classic scene where he's sort of, oh, woe is me, throwing his hand back and his head up on his hand up on his forehead. They go speeding off with Warlock again, and the Power Pack kids have an idea. They're going to try to boost Sunspot's self-confidence by giving him a supervillain for him to fight. So they take Julie, who has the power to change her molecular density. She grows tall, and they cover her in a sheet with a bunch of crazy little props on her, and they send her tearing off after Sunspot. Sunspot and Warlock show up just in time. An epic battle ensues. Julie is defeated before she disappears. The kids have a bit of a freak out, and it's only then that Sunspot sees that he's been duped yet again. And again, a crisis of confidence has taken place. All the way through this, by the way, Warlock keeps asking to go home, and Sunspot keeps saying, no, we're not hero enough. Warlock is finally fed up with his shit, grabs him, throws him into his belly as a spaceship, and blasts off, heading back to wherever the New Mutants hang out. I'm going to assume it's at the mansion with the rest of the X-Men. And then the kids decide it's going to go back home. Franklin Richards goes back to sleep because he's been there in his dream self the whole time. The kids manage to sneak in. The parents catch them, read them the riot act, and the kids go to bed ready for another madcap adventure next month.
So here's the thing. We've actually read a surprisingly high number of issues of Power Pack on this podcast. This is about maybe the 5th time Spider-Man's shown up. I don't think this issue was quite as good as previous ones. And I have a little bit of an issue with the art, which we'll talk about later. But I really did enjoy the story. And the whole thing of them creating a fake bad guy for Sunspot to fight and dressing up in this almost Looney Tunes-esque ridiculous costume, I thought was great, especially because I'm assuming this is aimed at a younger audience. So I really did enjoy this issue. But Jeff, I just want to know, this is your first impression of Power Pack. What did you think of this issue?
Definitely geared towards kids, for sure. And I really liked the interaction between the kids themselves. It felt very natural. I felt the conversations very flow. I mean, it's been discussed before, I'm sure, but you have to interject a lot of exposition in the comics. Like people will just say things to each other that everybody's already well aware of, but just so the reader can get a sense of what's going on. But I felt like the conversations, the Warlock Sunspot got a little bit much after a while. Sunspot's constant existential crisis going through the entire comic, and then Warlock's speech is just difficult to follow already with his version of self and such. So I felt that made it a little bit more difficult. And yeah, there's like 3 panels of Spider-Man, so we definitely could have used a little bit more of our favorite wall crawler. But overall, I did like the issue, and I think, as far as kids go, I think kids would really, really dig it for the reasons that you detailed, Michael. The kids coming together and making a fake monster for trying to make Sunspot feel better about himself. That's a great message for them to put across, right?
Right. Joshua Mervell, you've read a few Power Packs now. What do you think of this one?
Yeah, I think, kind of echoing what you guys said, it was a pretty fun read. There's a lot going on. It's super fast paced. I think that the stuff with Warlock and Sunspot is a little weak, and maybe it's due to the fact that we kind of have to stop to bring in some other characters just to kind of have them there, like Spider-Man coming in and Vulture and all of these other characters, just kind of interrupting the story. Maybe took away from some of the time we could have spent developing maybe a little bit more of why Sunspot is so upset, because they really just all amount to cameos in the comic. But it was still pretty fun. Again, fast paced and campy, and it really does feel like a kid's Saturday morning cartoon.
Jolie, G.I. Jolie, you just read this one today, right? What did you think of this one?
I read both of them today. Don't be silly. It was cute. My favorite part is Julie, who's psychology 101ing everybody throughout the entire issue. It was really weird. By favorite, I mean not favorite at all and kind of annoying. I mean, we're going to get to the art, but which it doesn't seem like you liked or you had issues with. I did not, unfortunately. I actually really liked it. Like Jeff said, it's sort of, sorry.
I was going to say, I actually love the art. I love the pencils. I'm not sure about Hilary Barta's inks. That's what I was going to say, but you can go ahead.
Oh, is that what he did? Is he primarily an inker? Okay, because I saw Hilary Barta on here.
Yeah, well, Hilary Barta is more of a cartoonist, like a funny animal or a satirical cartoonist. And I think we've met him at conventions. He's a really good artist. It's just that I don't know if his pairing with Jon Bogdanove works here.
So, yeah, what I mean to say is it was really hard to discern what his credit was in the book because of the way that the credits are laid out. So I was like, oh, that's weird. Hilary Barta is usually an artist, but like he's listed as part of the writing team. I don't know.
No,
I can't tell.
I think what they're implying is it might be because it says Jon Bogdanove and Hilary Barta are the artists. Now, it's possible they just switched off on pages, but it's also possible Jon Bogdanove did layouts and Hilary Barta just finished them. I'm not sure.
Okay, sorry. I see it now. I'm also not reading the words editor or editor in relief. Ha ha.
Okay.
Because it looks like 4 people are the artists, and I'm an idiot.
Okay.
Or I'm not as attentive. I'm not an idiot, but I'm not as attentive as I should be. Also, anyway, yeah, I really, really enjoy the art. I don't really mind the inking either. The coloring is weird, but that is just. I feel like it's just like a product of its time and a product of us reading reprints that have been recolored. My eyes are just
I think it's just a scan. That's why it looks odd, because it's just a scan of a newsprint comic. That's probably why it looks funny.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm used to reading scanned reprints, which are recolored for this show. And that's why this may look different to me, because it's actually scans of the original.
Like on certain pages, you can actually see through to the other side of the page where the ads are. So like, when they do like the big coloring for the background, where it's like a big solid color like purple or blue, oftentimes you can see the other side of the paper in these scans that we're reading.
Yeah. So like I was saying, I concur with Jeff. It's like it's meant for an adolescent audience, which I think who Power Pack is targeting. But it's still like palatable for an adult to read. There's a lot. I can't imagine being like a 10 to 16-year-old reading Power Pack and like understanding what's his name?
Warlock.
Warlock. Yeah. I barely could keep up with Warlock as well, so I don't know if that's a thing, but maybe it shouldn't be a thing. Becca?
Well, I'll say quickly, sorry, Becca, Warlock's speech pattern was created by Chris Claremont, and he's one of those writers that gets a little bit self-indulgent with like, let's do a funny accent, or let's give this guy a weird speech pattern, and then make the issue 10 times more difficult to read.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Oh, yeah.
So, Becca, what did you think of Power Pack 33?
I don't like the Power Pack. I know, and I feel like if I was a kid, I would have hated it too. When I was the age that these children are, I was reading, like, I wanted to see what Superman was feeling. I don't care about children because I was a children, right? Like, and it's not that I don't like kids. It's just, God, they're annoying. I'm kidding. No, yeah, you just have like, it's a lot going on, right? So you've got Sunspot being a whiny bitch the whole time. You've got the whole time. It doesn't conclude at all.
No.
Warlock and his difficult to read speech pattern, and then the Power Pack who are talking like children, and like every Power Pack issue you have to learn a lesson. It's like they're all after school specials, right? So if I was like 10, this would be a lot for a 10-year-old. Like this would take me a month to read. I'd be like, oh Jesus, I got my like work cut out for me. like all crossovers, I thought it was pretty pointless. Like, it didn't add anything that it was Sunspot or Warlock or Spider-Man was there for 2 panels. It's like, cool, Spider-Man. But, like, why is he on the cover? He doesn't do anything.
He has to read it, right?
That's what I hate about these crossovers so much. It's like, in this issue, Power Pack team up with Spider-Man. No, they don't. They run into him, which is fine. I love that the universe is vast and big and superheroes run into each other all the time. But the Power Pack does not team up with Spider-Man in this issue.
I will say one thing I really did dig, though, is that there was no villain in this issue. You see Vulture, but for like a page and a half, right? And then he's gone. We never see Vulture again. He's not even really referenced after that. And then there's no villain. The only villain is Sunspot's whininess. That's the biggest his existential crisis throughout the whole comic. And the kid's trying to solve that problem. There's no muhahaha comic book villain there going after the kids like that. I thought that was kind of a cool twist that you don't see very often in comics from this era.
Yeah,
the real villain is the inability to tell the truth.
I thought it was going to be your teenage hormones and your mutation probably aren't helping the fact that you're sad for no reason and you don't understand why. And maybe if your parents like were there to help you figure it out, you would, but they're not. So you just. And what kind of dad is Charles Xavier? A bad one. So look, I was a pretty whiny emo teen too, and I feel like just having sun absorption powers would make that worse.
Anyway, okay, I want to talk about the art again briefly. Jon Bogdanove is one of my favorite artists. I think it's Bogdanove, one of my favorite artists. And so is Hilary Barta. He's a great artist. I did think the inks were too thick, but I noticed that if I look at the page, kind of like shrunk a little bit on my computer, you can see how perfect these layouts in this storytelling is. Like, he really is a great artist. They both are. But Jeff, what did you think of the art in this one?
What's funny about that is I mentioned before when we were talking before we started recording is that I was more, when I collected during this time frame, I was more into DC than I was into Marvel. And at the time when I was collecting, I think in 90 or 91, Jon Bogdanove was doing the layouts for Man of Steel.
Right.
During the death of Superman and then the reign of the Superman. And I hated them at that point in that run because everything seemed really, really exaggerated and really, the lines were so harsh. I don't know. It didn't really, in this one, this is a few years before, it seems like his style is a lot more muted than it was in Man of Steel. It's not as brash and not as harsh as it was then. So I didn't mind them here at all, other than, like we've talked about the wonky coloring and such due to the scan. I thought the layouts were fine.
You know what's funny? I hated Jon Bogdanove when he was doing X Factor for just the reason you said. Everything was so over the top and exaggerated. And then when he went to Man of Steel, I actually thought he was better. But what I realized was I think he's one of those guys that needs extra time to draw because I've seen him do like commissions where it's just like one image or like a poster, and he is incredible. I think the problem is that on a monthly comic he's rushed, so he's probably finding ways to cut corners. He's probably just like, okay, just get it done. But as I got older, I definitely liked his stuff. But when I was younger, I did not enjoy it, just like you. Yeah. So, Josh, did you talk about the art?
No, I kind of I think that the inking is I kind of like the inking in certain spots. Those like really exaggerated thick lines really help sell like perspective in some panels. In others, it definitely does feel rushed, and it's like the entire panel is like drawn with a heavy hand. But when you look at something like that opening splash page with Warlock walking, and he's doing this like crazy walk where the foot is in the foreground and he's in the background, the foot being like heavily inked, and then as it goes further away, it just like helps to sell like this movement that's happening. And then later on, when Vulture is flying away as well, we get this like really awesome close-up of Vulture's face, and the lines are so thick. And then in the background, we see Warlock and Sunspot kind of flying towards him, and it's just a silhouette. And then the further back you go, the thinner the lines are. So like the city at the bottom is like super, super thin lines. So like there's definitely moments where I think it really kind of stands out, and I kind of like that it's so pushed. But then there are definitely other moments where it's just like close up of like one of the kids' faces, and it's just like big, huge, thick lines, and it doesn't feel like it needs to be that exaggerated. So
Right.
I think it totally works though for this comic. Again, those exaggerations kind of fit in with the like childish, campy nature of the story. So I thought it was I thought the art was really great for the story.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And Becca, did you talk about the art yet?
No, I thought it was
What do you-
okay. Nothing really like jumped out at me too much, I guess. Like,
Okay.
I'm always talking about like, there's always like that one panel that I'm like, yes. And then this one I was like, it's not bad by any stretch of the mean, but I just maybe am not as into this kind of style. Like, it seems like if you're feeling rushed and stuff, maybe don't do so much heavy background work because then it could start to get muddy.
Sure.
Right.
But I always loved how people draw Sunspot, especially old Sunspot.
Oh,
I
yes.
Love how he's just Kirby Crackles all the way around, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And like, obviously you can't really be boring and draw Warlock. It's like not really possible. I don't think it would work as much because I've seen Warlock drawn more like modern, and I don't think it works as well as when he's like so much like a different character style than everyone else. Like if you look at any modern Warlock stuff, he's just like this big robot instead of like this weird alien robot. So I do appreciate that. But yeah, I think I just don't like Power Pack. I think I just don't like being told what lesson I need to learn. It's like, don't tell me what to do. I don't want to learn anything. That's why I'm reading comic books. If I wanted to learn stuff, I'd read other books.
I remember
mine.
kids like you when I used to be a tutor. Anyway, okay. So
I was a straight A 4.0 GPA student, okay? Sometimes you want to break and you want to read superheroes punching each other.
okay.
I did like the way he did the effect on Franklin Richards, especially when he first appears to the rest of the Power Pack, because the bottom half of him is all kind of squiggled out because it's like his dream self or whatever. I thought that was a really unique way of doing that. It's almost like he's just slightly out of phase, but only like from the bottom half down. I thought that was a unique way of doing that. I thought that looked pretty cool. That couldn't have been easy to pull off.
Even just, you know, I'm not a huge, I don't really care as much as other people about like a shared universe, but I love the fact that they're on this adventure. And then Franklin Richards just shows up. He's like, hey, guys, I'm just having a dream. And the fact that he's a character from Fantastic Four, but he's always here, I think is so freaking awesome. Josh, what were you going to say?
It's so weird, too. It almost looks like he's drawn in a completely different style. Like, his eyes are just like Calvin and Hobbes, just like dots most of the time. Even when he's standing next to the other kids, they have like fully rendered eyes, and he's still like these two dots, like a... you know, Charlie Brown character or something, and then him just like popping up to, you know, comment on things, and then at the end, when they all kind of go their own way, he turns to them and says, "Good night, Power Pack. I love you."
Yeah,
it's so great. Nobody responds to him.
No one says it back.
Yeah. Night, Frank. After
bye,
he
Frank.
says, "I love you," he's just like, "Okay, bye."
Friend zoned.
Yeah.
It's funny because I saw on Twitter, I think there was a story about how Marvel's like, when we do Avengers 5, it's got to be an even bigger threat than Thanos. I'm like, why don't you just do Power Pack and Spider-Man and Warlock hang out, and Franklin Richards says, I love you at the end. Why can't that be the movie, right?
Yeah.
Whatever.
I mean, I would watch it.
Right.
Where are Reed and Sue?
Paw
How come
Patrol 3.
How come like Franklin can just leave the Baxter building and they don't notice?
He's
no,
not
it's only his
there.
dream self.
But like, you think Reed would have like some sort of sensors, be like, "Oh, my kid's out astral projecting again. Gotta, maybe figure that out." He's the smartest man in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Use that science to figure out the supernatural science behind detecting the astral plane.
Because this is like when Franklin Richards is like, "Oh, that's my power, is I can have a dream self," and then later on we realize no, it's a lot more than that. But like, because Franklin didn't have any powers originally, right? He's just kind of like a boy.
I don't think so, but yeah, it kind of developed as we went along.
And they're like, what if we made him the most powerful being in all the Marvel universe?
Yeah. Well, anyway, I have
And
to
nobody even says I love you to him. He could kill them.
Exactly.
That's why, yeah.
Rude.
Super villain origin.
So
Sad.
anyway, sad to say this is probably the last issue of Power Pack we'll read on Spider-Cast because this is the last guest appearance of Spidey in a Power Pack comic in the 80s. So sad to see you go,
He was
guys.
barely here.
I love
Do you
Power
see the
Pack. but
giant
anyway.
grin on Becca's face? Oh, no more Power Pack?
Oh,
That's
beans.
fine. There's
See you
no
later, you stinking kids.
there's no blood and punching in Power Pack. It's for children.
Okay, so and that's going to contrast with our next book. We'll talk about that in a minute. But before we wrap up, Jeff, do you recommend this comic book?
Yeah, if you're like in that 10 to 12 to 15-year-old sort of range and you're looking for just some good slapstick fun, and especially if you were a New Mutants fan so that you already knew Sunspot and Warlock and you were kind of used to their speech pattern and overall whininess, yeah, it's a great comic for kids. Like I said, no villain. The message is the comic. I think that's great. So if you're a 40-year-old bitter old man like me, no, I don't recommend this comic. No, you're going to be disappointed.
All right. Parker, do you like this comic? What do you think?
I'm
loved
so
it.
sorry.
He loved it.
He loved it. It's the perfect age range. Yeah, I think that if you're interested in reading Power Pack, sorry for his snoring. If you're interested in reading Power Pack, then I would recommend this. Or if you're in the age range to read it, I would recommend it. But I don't think it was like... It didn't stand out enough for me to go out of my way to recommend it to just anybody, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So, yeah, it was good, though.
For those listeners out there that can't see our video feed, there is a dog on Josh's lap, and that's where these grunting and snoring is coming
Very
from.
needy. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
It's not my audio that's doing that. I just want to be clear.
Yeah, that wasn't Becca. G.I. Julie, do you recommend this comic?
It's only partially my audio. Sorry, I too snorted and I had to, yeah.
Oh.
No one could beat that snorting. It was like prolonged for a few seconds. I enjoy it. It lets us know he's there. I enjoyed it. Maybe I'm annoyed by kids too. Because I was like, no, Becca's onto something. I didn't enjoy it that much, and I don't know why. And I think that might be it. Whiny children are not my bag. But yeah, I'll recommend it, especially to the age range that it's meant for, but also... okay, I can't recommend it. This is a Spider-Cast. I can't recommend it to anyone who reads Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I recommend that they look elsewhere for Spider-Man for sure. Wow, he's still at it, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, anyway. Okay,
Yeah.
Bex Luthor, do you recommend this comic?
What up? Actually, I'm gonna say, yeah. I'm gonna shock everybody. And you want to know why? Because just because I don't like something doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means it's not for me.
Whoa!
I know the hottest take on the internet. Holy
If
crap.
I don't like something, doesn't mean it's crap.
No. Sometimes things aren't for you. But that
I
doesn't
gotta
mean
get
that
on
they're bad.
Twitter and talk about how much I hate this thing.
Yeah, I hate it and it's bad and nobody else should like it. And if they like it, they're wrong. No, I'm not a 12-year-old girl anymore, despite my physique. So, so it's no wonder that I didn't like this. And I'm not surprised that Mike liked it because I'm sure when he was young, he read this. And so that makes sense.
I did, but I would have if it was
Exactly.
there.
Like, here's the thing. I'm not 12 and I'm not going to enjoy comics mostly. I say mostly because sometimes I do. I like a good My Little Pony as much as the next brony, but it's not for me. And these are not the type of stories that I want to read. So instead of talking about how shit it is, I'm just going to go and read the stories that I would like to read because those also exist and things can coexist in the world.
Look at that. There's our lesson for the day. Thank you, Becca.
You're welcome. Way better lesson than in this issue. Just kidding. Not really.
Okay. Okay, guys. On that note,
Take
now
that,
we are
internet! Come for me. You can find me on Twitter This girl doesn't know what she's talking about.
Okay, here we go, folks. Now, just to give a very short backstory to this, Jeff, are you familiar with a character called the Hobgoblin?
Familiar in as such that I know there's a character called the Hobgoblin. That's
Okay.
where my familiarity ends.
Okay, so that's fine. So part of my obsession with the 80s Spidey is my obsession with the Hobgoblin, because the Hobgoblin was introduced in 1983, and they kept his identity a secret for about 4.5 years, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And the original writer had one idea, then the second writer had another idea, and then blah, blah, blah. Basically, what happened was at this point, Tom DeFalco was the main writer on Amazing Spider-Man, and he had I think he had a person in mind that he wanted to be the Hobgoblin. Peter David was writing Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man, and he had his idea of who was going to be the Hobgoblin. And then Jim Owsley, who later became Christopher Priest, who you might have heard of. I'm not sure if you know Christopher Priest. He wrote Black Panther and stuff like that.
Oh, yes. Okay, yep.
Yeah. He was the editor of Spider-Man at the time at the young age of 25. He was in charge of this whole thing. And for some reason, he decided to go behind everyone's back, write this story. And I don't know if anyone knows this, but Ned Leeds is supposed to be the Hobgoblin, and Jim Owsley kills Ned Leeds in this story.
Yeah, boy, howdy, does he ever.
You're right. So he wrote it behind everyone's back. They drew the issue, and then he'd already fired Tom DeFalco, which we'll talk about next week. And then he told Peter David, oh, by the way, Ned Leeds can't be the Hobgoblin because I'm killing him in Spider-Man versus Wolverine. Peter David's like, that's impossible. Like, we've set it all up to be this way. So anyway, the point of the story is that the Spider-Man editorial office was a mess at this time. Jim Shooter was the editor-in-chief. He was also fired soon after this. So maybe there's more going on here than we know about. But in the midst of all this issue comes out. First of all, Ned Leeds could be taken out and be exactly the same story. So I don't know why they had to stick Ned Leeds in this story. But this issue has always been one of my favorites, and we're going to talk about what happens right now. So, Spider-Man versus Wolverine special. So we start off with a flashback to the past. We know it's the past because Wolverine is wearing his yellow and blue costume, which at the time he was not wearing. And he's narrating in a kind of hard-boiled detective kind of style the story about him and this person named Charlie, who was, a KGB operative that I guess had turned on the KGB. And he had oh my God, you guys got to help me out. There's so much narration here. But basically, this person, Charlie, had decided to defect from the KGB. And in this flashback, I don't even remember. I just know that Wolverine's killing people. But I don't remember exactly what the motivation was for Charlie doing what Charlie did.
Sometimes.
KGB ordered... They sent her on a mission, and then after the mission, they ordered a hit on her. She survived, and then in turn decided that she was going to kill everybody that tried to accomplish that hit for the KGB. Right.
Okay, so in this flashback, we get this classic Wolverine narration that I love, which is, I should have blacked out. In a way, I guess I did. I remember my scream, involuntary, every muscle nodded. Guess the man in me was blacked out. All that was left was the animal. And then we see just, claws and blood and everything. And this is classic 80s Wolverine. And then on the next page, all these dead bodies around him. He's standing there with his claws out. This is great stuff. This is what I love. I ate this up when I was a kid. So basically, at the end of the scene, he sees this little heart locket that's left behind by Charlie. And he's like, oh, the charm proved it. Charlie's way of saying I won. So now Charlie disappears. Wolverine doesn't know where Charlie is. Then we cut to, so we can only assume that was pre-X-Men Wolverine, maybe, when he was Weapon X. Then we cut to the present. And this is where it's a little bit confusing, because in the present day, whenever there's narration, we usually have different colored narration boxes. Now, in this comic, Wolverines are pink and Spider-Mans are yellow, but nowadays, we usually get more of an indication, like a little Spidey logo, right? Or colors that match the costume. So sometimes it's hard to understand who's talking. But we cut to narration by Spider-Man, and he's narrating himself as he's swinging through the city, kind of just going through the routine of his, Spidey life. The typical stuff, back to his apartment, Daily Bugle, gets an assignment, and what we find out is that Ned Leeds, who's one of the top reporters at the Bugle, has been working on a story connecting, the KGB together with certain things that are going on. Peter Parker is with Aunt May, blah, 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 the same old thing. Peter Parker gets sent on this mission. There's this little subplot with a sniper that Spider-Man gets involved in, which turns out to be, we find out later, is Charlie, who's killing off KGB agents because, this mom and pop couple who owned like a little store, how could these innocent people get killed? Well, it turns out that they were KGB agents. So Spider-Man, actually, and this is the other thing. Apparently, this is the issue where Spider-Man and Mary Jane, what's that called? They reconcile? What's it called when you
rekindle
the romance? Technically, they hadn't been a couple since like Amazing Spider-Man, 183 or something, and this is when they finally rekindle the romance, and then within a year of this, they get married. So anyway, that's an important part of this. So J. Jonah Jameson sends Ned Leeds and Peter Parker on this mission to Berlin. And then we're cutting back and forth. Now we're with Wolverine's narration. He's explaining how the X-Men are in disarray because of the mutant massacre, blah, blah, blah. Wolverine goes to Berlin. He's tracked down by these two KGB agents. He kills them. Pardon me. And then he ends up tracking down Spider-Man. I love this scene. He's walking through a crowd, and he's like, I pick up a scent that sets off all my alarms. I'm genuinely surprised I don't show it. That kid. Never saw him before in my life, but scents don't lie. That's Spider-Man. And I just love, Josh and I have talked about this before. This is 20 years into this Marvel universe, but at this point, not everybody knew each other's identity. So it's kind of cool because Josh and I, we've read the issue where Captain America learns his identity. We might have read, I don't remember, Iron Man learning it. So this is still now everybody knows everybody's identity, right? Mm-hmm. In like 2021. Back then it was kind of like a slow burn thing, which I really like. So Wolverine comes to, I love this. Wolverine comes to Spider-Man's like hotel room and tries to convince him basically, listen, you're in over your head. Go back home. You don't want to get involved with this. And of course, Spider-Man ignores him. Spider-Man, by the way, did not bring his costume with him. So they go swinging around town. Spider-Man's wearing his street clothes with just his web shooters. And Wolverine's trying to explain to him, you just go back home. This is too much for you. You're just a kid, whatever. Spider-Man goes back to his apartment. He opens up the door, and sure enough, Ned Leeds is dead. Now, I should also point out, besides Ned Leeds being the secret identity of the Hobgoblin, he's also been a supporting character in Spider-Man for like 20 years. So this is a fairly big deal at the time, which makes it also kind of odd that he was just shoehorned into the story for no reason. So Wolverine shows up. By the way, so all these KGB agents come out of the woodwork. Wolverine shows up, and Wolverine, of course, kills them all. They take off, and Spider-Man is not listening to Wolverine's advice because he remembers, just like he does in every issue of Spider-Man, that with great power comes great responsibility. So he knows he's got to help out. So he goes to this costume shop in what is one of my favorite scenes in the book. And because he didn't bring his costume with him, he's got to find something in this costume shop that looks like his Spider-Man costume. So he's using like a little German-English kind of dictionary, explaining to him. He's trying to explain to the guy what he wants. He's like, I want a bodysuit. No, that's not what correct. Bodysuit. And then this German guy's like, I don't have any black bodysuits. And he's like, you speak English? So do you. And he's like, I don't have any black bodysuits sold out. And he's like, in fact, the only thing like that in the whole store isn't for sale. It belongs to my son who's going to wear it to a party tomorrow. Just finish it today. But it's not black, and it's rather silly looking. He holds up an actual Spider-Man costume, which is awesome. So Peter Parker's like, I just want to die. So then he cuts to the next shot, and Spider-Man's swinging through the city, and he's like, everything's fine now. I got my Spider-Man costume. It's just like the original. Well, almost. And on the back, it says, Die Spine, which, does anyone here know German? I'm assuming that means the spider.
It says, Die Spinne. Yeah.
What does that mean?
The spider.
Oh, there you go. Jolie, who not only knows English, you also know Laotian, Thai, and Italian, and now German?
Yeah, I've been doing it on Duolingo.
That's
so it's
freaking
weird that he went
awesome.
to a clothing store called Geschlossen, which means closed anyway.
Oh, okay. Maybe that was a mistranslation.
I only
See,
knew it
now-
said the spider because of that episode of The Simpsons where Sideshow Bob gets a tattoo, and when it says "Die Bart, die," and they're like, obviously you were gonna try to kill Bart, and he's like, no, it means the Bart thee in German, and I was like, dies the. So thank you, pop culture.
So Jolie, you're one of those people that's taken advantage of the pandemic as an opportunity to learn another language. That's great.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, pre-pandemic, but it's free. Come on, get on it, folks.
Okay. I actually
Just
have
watch
a
old
book.
episodes of The Simpsons.
Yeah.
Seems like a lot of
I have
work.
a book somewhere. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, I tried to learn German too. I gave up after 5 minutes. Anyway, so basically, Spider-Man meets up with Wolverine. They do what you do in Berlin, which is go over the wall into East Berlin, and he tries to track down a Spidey tracer, but Wolverine planted it on someone else. And then we get a little twist in the book where Wolverine finally meets up with Charlie, and this is where we learn Charlie's actually a girl. And he finds out what's been going on, and they, it's hinted that they hook up in the American lingo. And then in the next scene, they're in a bar, and they're hanging out. And we get a really cool kind of scene where they're basically talking about how they know that they're being watched. They know that everyone in the bar is probably KGB. And then, of course, they're trying to be subtle. And then Charlie's like, let's not spoil things. Next scene, we see 5 people, being thrown out of the kitchen, and Wolverine does a face palm. He's like, oh no. We see Spider-Man standing in full costume in the doorway, and he's like, for crying out loud, what's a fellow got to do to see a menu in this place? He jumps on the table. Wolverine's got his head, again, face palmed. When Spider-Man's like, hi, Wolverine, did you know the fruit was poisoned? Yes. Did you know you were trapped here? Yes. Did you know everyone in the joint's packing some mean hardware? Yes. So basically... The relationship here is like dumb kid and experienced veteran, and I freaking love it. This is probably the only Spider-Man Wolverine story I've ever enjoyed. It's excellent. Anyway, so now they're off getting shot at by KGB agents. Of course, Wolverine's got to do his thing, pops his claws, does the Frank Miller, kills everyone, pretty much. They escape. Charlie disappears, and then they track down the rest of the agents that they're after. And I don't even remember what happens after this. I don't even remember what this. It's because they're trying to kill Charlie because Charlie was trying to kill them. That's pretty much it, right? And he's still trying to convince Spider-Man to get out of here, to leave. And Spider-Man's like, no, I'm not leaving. Blah blah blah. So Wolverine goes home and meditates. Spider-Man goes home and just goes to sleep. And then Wolverine ends up going to this is what it is. So then Wolverine ends up meeting up with Charlie in a cemetery, and basically what the idea is now is that Charlie has killed everyone that she wanted to kill. So now she knows that the KGB is not only going to kill her, they're going to capture her and torture her. And so in order to avoid that, the only way she can get out of it is to be murdered or to die or to kill herself. So she asks Wolverine to just kill her. So he, just like he did in, X-Men 3 with Phoenix, he walks up to her and he's gonna pop his claws and he wants to kill her, but he just can't bring himself to do it. He's like, I flinched, she's still alive, and he's like, I want to say goodbye, say anything. Instead, I just pop my claws, one last cut, and it'll be over. But just before he can do it, Spider-Man webs him up and stops him. And he's trying to convince him that it's the wrong thing to do and blah, blah, blah. And then they start fighting, fist fighting back and forth, back and forth, back and forth for a few pages. And then this is again, a contrast to the Power Pack issue. Spider-Man is beating the crap out of Wolverine, like smashing his head into like a tombstone, beating him senseless. Wolverine's on top of him. And then Wolverine's like, you didn't have the guts to do it, but right now I could kill you. All I got to do is pop my claws up through your throat. And then, they talk it out. All of a sudden, a helicopter shows up. They're trying to figure out what to do. And then a hand comes up from behind Spider-Man. And Spider-Man thinks it's Wolverine. So he, in his rage, turns around and punches who he thinks is Wolverine as hard as he can in the face. But it turns out it wasn't Wolverine. It was actually Charlie. And so now Spider-Man has done what he was trying to convince Wolverine not to do. And that's that he's killed Charlie. So all of it, then the media shows up, the cops show up, they take off. Oh, sorry, no, this is all KGB? I don't even know.
It's
Yeah, I think
CIA,
it's all-
KGB, MI6, all of them.
Right, it's
Mhm.
everybody, yeah. And then Wolverine's like, actually, she's dead. So then they all take off. They're not interested anymore. They don't care. So Wolverine goes back to the States. Spider-Man is going to, what's it called? The customs. And he keeps flashing back to that moment where he kills Charlie. And he feels so guilty about it, obviously. He keeps flashing back. And then basically he doesn't know what to do. So then he goes back home and he calls Mary Jane. Actually, just like he did after he accidentally killed Gwen Stacy. Mary Jane shows up at his apartment to kind of like comfort him. And that's pretty much the end. And he's like, I hold her tight. I close my eyes. We make the pain go away. And that is the end. And that's it. And I'll just say I love the story. It's always been one of my favorites. I know it's kind of an odd duck in this era of Spider-Man because it's written by Jim Owsley and all this weird stuff with Ned Leeds kind of knocks it down a notch for me. But other than that, I thought it was a really good story with Wolverine and Spider-Man. Joshua Mervell, what did you think?
Yeah, this was super fun. I really like the dynamic between Spidey and Wolverine. I almost forget that Spidey is in a different place because it always feels awkward and like it doesn't feel like he belongs anywhere besides New York, but the story is so well done and the characters work so great together that I just forget that they're not in New York and it doesn't feel like out of place or anything. The whole Spider-Man killing Charlie at the end thing is kind of a weird move to have like Spider-Man be the one to like actually kill her. I don't know how I feel about that. Maybe they could have done like the Green Goblin thing where he dodges Wolverine's claws and Wolverine gets her or something, you know?
Right.
But yeah, all in all, I thought it was a pretty fun, interesting, a little bit more of like a darker tone story that worked.
Right. Jeff, what was your opinion on Spider-Man versus Wolverine?
Well, first of all, I think the title might be a little bit of a misnomer because I think there's 64 pages in this comic, and I think they versus each other for about a page and a half. So the lead up to that fight for me was a little bit too long. I would have liked to have seen more of the two of them duking it out. I gotta say, so all of the Wolverine, especially the Wolverine self-dialogue, I thought was fantastic. The way they wrote Wolverine is this, like you mentioned, Mike, like this grizzled veteran. This is the first time I've really gotten a sense of where Wolverine has been and the kind of shit he's done. It really had some weight and some gravitas to what he was all about and what he was doing. On the other hand, if you thought Sunspot was a whiny bitch in Power Pack, holy shit. The whole comic, Peter is such a fucking bummer, man. He is so down on himself the whole time. And I don't remember it being like, if this is indicative of Peter Parker in that time frame, like he's calling himself useless. He's like, what am I even doing here? And he said, yeah. And you know, he throws the costume away for the 8 millionth time. And I just felt like I mentioned this earlier before. I think the reason in the 90s I gravitated so much towards DC instead of Marvel is I understand Marvel's trying to make him a relatable guy. I don't want to remember that I have to, you know, take pictures to earn money to pay rent or I'm going to starve. I don't want to remember what it was like to be an angsty teen and my dad wouldn't let me have the car. Like I don't want to remember what it was like to feel useless. I want some level of escapism. And I feel like the Wolverine half of the story did that really, really well. And the Spider-Man half of the story did not, unfortunately. So that really kind of every time he was talking to himself and just completely shitting on himself, it really took me out of the story. I did like the end, though. I'm going to have to go against what Josh said. I thought it was a really unique way of doing that, having him inadvertently kill somebody. I was genuinely shocked that happened. And I'm like, that's going to mess with him for the rest of his life. And I think Wolverine even says that in like a little side panel, like that's going to haunt that kid for as long as he lives. I thought that was a really, really bold move. And I kind of tip my hat to 1987 writers in that comic. That was pretty darn cool. Overall, the story was fantastic. Just every time Peter talked, it just bummed me right out.
Okay. Julie, I noticed you nodding your head there when Jeff was commenting how whiny Peter Parker is. I'm with you, though. I think that's pretty much Peter Parker for the chorus for this era. But what did you think of this story?
No, he's whiny. He's whinier than usual in this one. I'm not saying that he's not whiny at other times because he's mostly whiny. So just in case you wanted to know, Jeff, he's whiny.
Good to know.
This is like the deep end though. Like, and I feel like that is maybe the writer. Because we start with Wolverine, who is like contemplative and thoughtful whiny, and then it kind of there's no once we jump into Spider-Man, there's no difference in voice, and that kind of
Good
that
point.
for me, because I know him to be whiny, it took it to like another level. It was just dreadful, and it's like, the fact that they didn't, even though the colors were different, it really wasn't different. It didn't feel like, I felt like I was reading one man's internal voice. And that's,
Right.
that's a fault of the writing. There's a lot of internal voice as well in this book, which I think is also a fault of the writing. And a lot of times I'm like, you know what? They are very explainy. They do a lot of explaining in the dialogue. And I wish there was more or less. There's like more storytelling in, what do they call those panels?
Well,
not
caption,
word
like
bubbles.
narration,
Captions?
kind of narration, but no, it's not. It's first person narration, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I know, I don't know what the word is for it though. But yeah.
Yeah. At times I wish there was more of that. Now I just am solely wishing for visual storytelling at this point because I can't stand to listen to either of them. They did the thing that I hate about thrillers or like espionage films, which is they shoehorn in a romance, and then they leave it. They also kill a huge character, and it's very like very minimal.
Mm-hmm.
And then they kill another character. The character is killed by the main character, and that kind of seems a little underdeveloped.
Mhm.
I like this. I like the story, and I like. This is a team up I didn't expect. I also didn't expect Wolverine to be doing as much meditating as he does, and he seems to meditate a lot in his underpants.
As you do.
Hey, right?
He's
I mean,
actually
he finds
kind of religious.
Yeah, he finds time for self-care even on a holiday to find his ex-girlfriend. I love it. The one thing I really, really liked about this book, though, was when they're flipping and flying through the streets of Berlin, and Spider-Man is not in his costume.
Yes.
But they're like pulling very typical like poses, and he's like in street clothes.
Right.
I really enjoyed that because Wolverine, he's like, I didn't bring my costume. Wolverine's like, so what? No one knows you here. But yeah, sure. It's late at night and if people see you, they're going to think it's weird.
Mm-hmm.
But no one knows who Spider-Man, well, I guess they do if there's a costume. But no one really knows who you are here. So it doesn't matter if you get like spotted. But yeah.
Okay, so we'll get back to you in a minute. Bex Luthor, what'd you think of this story?
This is what I'm talking about. Yeah, give me some grizzly man tears. I love a good whiny boy. Man, I read about sad boys all day. I love sad boys. That's how boys should be. Y'all should be sad for me. That's what feminism is. I don't know why I just tripped over my tongue. Well, that's embarrassing. No, I love this. This is great. This is Marvel team up wishes. Like, she wishes she could be this good at character interaction and storytelling.
Marvel team up walked so Spider-Man versus Wolverine could run. Okay, no, just kidding.
There you go.
Marvel team up wishes they could walk.
Oh, yeah.
I don't really like the introduction of, oh, this is the greatest secret agent of all time. She's better kill her. And then I don't remember, like, I've read a decent amount of Wolverine. I don't know if Wolverine talks about her ever again, so that's fun.
Probably never mentioned again. Yeah.
But I'm sure Peter will bring it up, right? Like, I read this, and as soon as I got to the end of the issue, I was like, the rest of fucking Spectacular and Peter Park and Amazing and Web of is going to be so brutal to read because Peter's going to be so fucking whiny about it. And I'm not looking forward to that. I hope maybe they're just like, yes, go.
Can I say, this issue, it says Charlemagne, only appearance, dies. So she's never mentioned again.
Peter doesn't mention the fact that he kills a woman ever again after this.
I guess not. Probably because the writer of the story was fired soon afterwards. Maybe that's why.
But, like, Ned's dead, and he does die, doesn't he? Like, in the next
Yes, he's definitely dead, yes.
So that continuity gets included, but not Peter punching a woman so hard she dies?
It's not.
Aw, that kind of sucks then. Like, I was going to be upset about it, but at least there's continuity. Oh, well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I just really love because both of these gentlemen are heroes, right? Like, and they're so vastly morally different. And I think one of my favorite ones is the panels where Wolverine's like meditating and Peter's like can't sleep because of what's going on and how much like it's affecting him, whereas Wolverine's meditating, like he's at peace, and he like murders people and all this shit. Like he knows who he is and what he is, whereas Peter thinks he needs to protect everybody and do everything, even though he's one man and needs to get the frick over it. I don't like that the Mary Jane kiss. Girl, what about Alfredo?
Oh, that's right. At
Her
this point,
boyfriend.
Jeff, Mary Jane has a new boyfriend for like 2 panels. So.
Oh, I thought she was just like big into pasta. I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
I love Alfredo sauce. That's my favorite.
No, she's seeing some guy and he's like such a goober, but like he's better than Peter frickin' Parker.
Yeah,
oh
but
my
is
God.
he Spider-Man? Like, come on.
Spider-Man's the worst boyfriend.
Well, duh,
consistently.
but he's still Spider-Man.
How many of Peter's girlfriends have died? Half of them.
I mean, you're technically right. There's only been 2. So I feel like it's a pretty small sample size.
Well,
no, there's been more.
Oh.
There's been more short-term ones.
Black Cat is completely traumatized with her obsession with him. Betty, her husband's dead. Sucks to suck.
Deborah Whitney.
Deb Whitman.
Yeah,
Everyone has
her
that.
character just
Justice
evolved
for
because
Deb.
her relationship with Peter. Peter ruins everyone's life, is basically what's going on. But I love that.
And he's about to ruin hers in about a year when they get married.
And then
because
Mephisto's
obviously-
going to come and take it away.
Yep.
Can't wait for that. They actually, I think in a recent Doctor Strange issue, they've talked about why Mephisto did that, actually. And it's pretty funny. Spoilers for recent issues of Spider-Man and Doctor Strange, but it turns out that the reason why Mephisto takes Peter Parker, Mary Jane's marriage and love away from them is because in the future, their daughter kills Mephisto. So he's like, nah, can't happen.
That's smart. See, that's good writing right there. Anyway.
See, we fix things afterwards, which I think that's what they try to do with the whole Hobgoblin thing, because I can't wait to read the shit show that is this reveal.
Coming our way, yes.
And I'm a big fan of this new trend in Spider-Man comics where people just die. Characters that have had 10, 20 years of history just die unceremoniously. Just,
right.
Oh yeah, Ned's just dead.
Yeah, it feels
Gone.
very, let's introduce Jimmy Olsen in this movie just so we can kill him in the same scene.
You're like, hey, Jimmy, you're my best friend in the whole world and no one will ever understand. Oh.
Yeah.
I guess I'm sad. He does have a lot more emotion about Ned being dead than he did when what's his face died.
Jean DeWolf.
Gene DeWolf.
Yes.
To be fair though, he's known Ned longer. And I guess they're friends?
Yeah, they're friends.
I don't know. I mean, Peter dated his wife before, so
Isn't he like
All in
sort
all-
of on the sly dating? No, that's the other woman. Sorry, Flash's
Yeah.
girlfriend.
Flash is cheating on his girlfriend with Ned Leeds' wife.
That's it.
Oh, just for the records, Ned Leeds was introduced in Amazing Spider-Man 18, so he's been around a long time.
Oof.
Yeah.
Oh.
And he's Ned's dead, and that's it. Like, he never appears again after this?
He comes back.
Well, what happens, I don't want to spoil it for our listeners, but what happens is you find out in a couple months that Ned Leeds was the Hobgoblin, and then they flash back to the scene and expand on what happened and why it happened.
Oh, okay.
But I think he might eventually come back to life. I'm not sure, Becca, if you know. Is he really dead?
Yeah, he dies, and then how does he come back to life? Who brings him back?
Is it a clone? It's the clone conspiracy.
It's a clone.
of course.
Yep, it's the clone thing.
Gotcha.
I was like, wait a second, how does Ned Leeds
Oh
come back to
yeah,
life?
clones.
You
Of
know,
course. Had
to be
be
fair, it is
clones.
Spider-Man, so
Mhm.
where there's Spider-Man. I'm on like the Wikipedia page for Ned Leeds, and it's like death no more, second death.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, yeah. I
Ned.
saw that.
Oh, buddy.
You're not gonna have a good time.
It's okay. I'm like, he didn't even do anything that bad. Yeah, he was the Hobgoblin, but it wasn't his fault. He's brainwashed. That's what I mean. He's brainwashed.
Yeah.
It's not. Yeah, he killed a bunch of people, but like, nice guy. I met him at a party. I don't know. I enjoyed this. Can we? I'm upset that this comic isn't going to have more retribution, but it does make me want to read more Wolverine, which I already enjoy reading Wolverine because
Yes.
I just love how old this character is and like how all of his history can constantly manifest at the same time, and because it doesn't age, it all makes sense still. So it's like, yeah, all these events happen to me, 80 years worth of history, but I'm still 40.
Yeah, see, in my
Yep.
late teens, early 20s, when I was collecting, and I wasn't into Wolverine, and now that I am a crotchety old man that's been through some shit, now I'm like, I get this dude now. Like, this totally makes sense. Like, I kind of want to go back and read some Wolverine stuff now that I'm a little bit more mature, because yeah, like you've said, like, he's been around for forever, right? Like,
Yeah, and I
timeline
mean-
wise, like not
yeah.
in the comic, but I mean timeline wise, he's been around for so long and seen so much, so he's
Right,
become a little
right,
bit bitter
right.
and jaded. So yeah, I can get behind that now.
Which
For
makes
sure.
sense when you've seen your girlfriend die like 6 times.
Right.
And then kiss another dude every time she comes back. So
Yeah, and he clearly has a penchant for redheads. That was as soon as that reveal happened, I'm like, wow, this dude knows what he likes. Because
I feel like every Marvel male superhero likes redheads.
yeah, what is that? What's
Pepper
that about?
Potts is a redhead, Jean Grey, Mary Jane.
Yeah, it's true.
They're all gingers.
Yeah, no souls.
But yeah, Wolverine currently, I don't know if anyone's reading current X-Men, is in a polyamorous relationship with Scott Summers and Jean Grey, so that's cool.
Say what? I don't even want to.
Yeah,
Whoa.
they have a bedroom that connects, and like Jean's is in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's because
Yeah,
on Krakoa. Yeah,
Krakoa.
sorry.
So is it strictly poly, or is there like spit roasting going on? Like, I just inquiring minds want to know. Like, is there ever a time?
architecture contains elements of a spit roast.
Okay.
But
they're
I
in love.
believe, yeah,
Well, yeah, he's
Which,
been
I
carrying that
mean-
torch for so long. Good on Scott for like leaning
Right?
into that. That's crazy town.
I think he really just needed to. The writers really just needed to admit that Scott is bi or poly or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know why they decided to make Iceman gay when they should have just been like, wait, no, Scott Summers is bisexual.
Scott Summers has been here the entire time, guys.
Yeah. Hello, a bi icon. He's whiny. All of his wives can stomp him. Like, that doesn't scream bisexual energy. What am I even doing?
Well, hey, the new Superman's bisexual. They just released. So
Dude, I'm so freaking pumped. Holy shit. I've already like pre-ordered all my variant covers. I want all those boys
it's
kissing.
very, very, very cool. So
Wait, Superman can't be gay? Well, it's his son, so too bad.
yeah, guess what? Yes, you can.
Guess what? All the Gen Zs are gay, and there's nothing you can do about it.
I think everyone is a little bit gay. It's just a matter of whether you wanted to admit it to yourself.
Well, Kurt Cobain said that, right? Everyone is gay. Okay, let's talk about the art by Mark Bright.
Pretty gay.
Pretty gay.
10 out of 10, pretty gay.
Mike, that was a brilliant transition piece. Go.
So,
We just talk about nonsense, and Mike's like, anyway, the comic book.
so Mark Bright, known for his art on Iron Man and G.I. Joe, and he also did the Falcon miniseries. I think the art here is fine, not great, but it's pretty good. It's definitely, it fits in with this era of Spider-Man comics. Josh, what did you think?
Yeah, kind of like what you said. It was fine. I don't think anything stood out to me that was bad. I thought it was pretty average, like pretty good throughout. And then there were definitely moments that stood out as like exceptionally good. Particularly on like the storytelling side of things, when Peter's constantly having the flashbacks to him killing Charlie, and it's like the same panel over and over again, and it's like the same panel of when it actually happened, but done in like a completely different style, and it really does feel like a flash of a memory. Right. So there's definitely moments like that are really well done in this. And I think tonally, it goes well with the more darker adult themes that are happening in the story. So, yeah, it was good.
G.I. Jolie, what do you think of the art?
Oh, I liked the art. Though, you know how some people are like, some artists are really afraid of like drawing hands, or like they're not great at drawing feet. Weirdly, Spider-Man is like barefoot in a lot of this issue, and I really didn't notice that was a thing until I saw the way this artist draws his bare feet. It's terrible. Yeah, it's like the way I draw hands, equally terrible. But also, why is he not wearing shoes or socks?
I think it's because he needs to touch the surface to stick to walls.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why.
Is he always this barefoot?
No, actually, what I just said makes no sense because he wears a spandex costume.
Footies.
But I think if he has his like a regular shoe with a sole, I don't think he could stick to the walls. I think that's why anyway.
Okay, so it's the whole lack of a costume. I mean, he really is only barefoot in Germany, except for that one time in his apartment where he's only in his underwear, which I mean, accurate, I guess. We all hang out in our underwear in our own apartments or dwellings. So, I mean, if we weren't doing this podcast, we'd only be in our underwear, right? Anyway, there was one.
Correct.
There was one podcast though where,
Hello.
Nobody noticed too, except for me.
Thank you, Becca.
Way to go, boys.
Wow. I don't know. I was too busy looking at Spider-Man comics.
Yeah, exactly.
Make a girl, whatever. Spider-Man's right here.
Story of my life. Bex Luthor, what do you think of the art?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Julie.
Sorry, Jolie, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, it's okay. But anyway, do what the ink is really, the inking to me at times is really thin, but I don't know if that's a product of it being a recoloring.
I don't know. Yeah. Bex Luthor?
Yeah, no, I liked it. I think it's one of those where it's like, it doesn't, just detract from the writing at all with being bad or good. It complements the story. So it's not like, whoa, this art is crazy amazing, but also like, I'm not distracted by bad art or anything like that.
Right.
I love the decision that when Wolverine is killing a lot of people with his claws, it's just the flash of color and then some claw marks. They do that I think a couple times.
Yeah.
And actually, I really enjoyed the cemetery fight with Spider-Man and Wolverine. I think that's some of the best art in the book, and it's really, I don't know if this is the recolor, but even still, it's like dynamically colored. I like the lighting in it. I like the...
Right.
Logan needs to stop smoking in cemeteries, but besides that, I enjoy it. Yeah, no. It's good, interesting. Keeps me engaged, at least. I'm not like, wow, these backgrounds suck.
Right.
It's hard when you're like trying to have an emotional punchline in your writing, and then Spider-Man looks like the meme Spider-Man when he looks like the Spooderman. So like, That's great. Why are the writers and why is everyone making Spider-Man go to Europe so much lately?
I don't know if that's just a trend. They're trying to make him more serious, so they're trying to get him involved in world politics. I'm not sure.
Nothing's more serious than Europe.
Yeah, because
Well, at the time, the Berlin Wall and the IRA and all that.
I love that he just jumps the Berlin Wall. He's like, nah, I'll just jump over it.
I also love how he almost gets killed by a landmine, but his spider sense saves him. But anyway.
Yeah, and I was reading some of like the trivia or whatever for the issue, and like when Spider-Man's like, oh, these guys are probably talking about how many guys they've killed. They're talking about like their mom's stew recipe, actually.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
I was like, oh, German. I want to translate it. I want to see what it says. And it's just like, she puts carrots in it. And like, I was like, oh, that's funny.
Jeff, we haven't asked you about the art yet. What'd you think of the art on this one?
I liked it. Yeah, it's like we've talked about before. It's definitely a sign of the times, that 80s type of art. This being like a premiere issue, a higher cost issue too, and a bigger issue. I don't know. I think maybe my expectations were a little bit high. I will tell you one thing that I really, really liked, and it was reminiscent for me of a lot of the key Batman issues I have, was the long, thin panels, especially when they're in like a cityscape. It really gives you that sense that they're in between buildings, or they're at the ground floor of these tall, huge buildings, both in New York and then when they get over to Berlin. It really lent a sense of scope for me that I think was missing in the Power Pack comic and some of the other comics, where you're just looking at your flat panels or whatever, and we're just going through the motions. Those long, skinny panels really, really touched it off. And then, yeah, I love how they creatively sort of got around some of the Comics Code stuff by having Wolverine just slice and dice and Ginsu knife his way through all these dudes, but all the blood is either pink or white or discolored in such a way that it's not just huge splashes of red and gore around. So you still get to have that sense of that we never even get really in the movies, of Wolverine just cutting loose and just ripping through 20 guys. By the way, were there enough KGB agents in this story? Like, how many KGB agents were killed in this story?
Agents,
yeah. Is there any KGB left? Because I'm fairly certain they all died. I thought that was a unique way of getting around and showing just what Wolverine does and what he's capable of. But yeah, those long, skinny panels, like the layouts were just fantastic. Yeah, loved it.
And I'm going to assume that was Frank Miller's influence, because Frank Miller drew the Wolverine miniseries. And so when they did this, they were probably trying to emulate the style of that book. So maybe that's why they had all the skinny panels. But you're right. They definitely do sell, the architecture of like New York and whatever. So yeah, you're right. The scale looks great.
Yep.
So yeah,
I think the reverse of that is also true later on in the cemetery scene. There's a lot of long, skinny panels horizontally.
That's right.
And it really helps, especially like particularly in the moment where they have all of the officers and like the CIA, everybody is there after Charlie gets killed, and then the lights go out and they come back on, and it's just like the same landscape, the same like scale, but it's just Spidey and Wolverine, and they're like tiny in frame, and you can really see how just kind of like empty it is after they're kind of just left there. Wolverine thinking about how his love is dead, and Spidey how he killed a civilian that didn't need to be killed. So yeah, I totally agree with you. The panels are super fun in this one.
Absolutely.
And also, we usually disparage, annuals and team ups, because they're usually pointless team ups, and annuals are overlong filler crap. But this story, not only was it a great team up and a great contrast between the two characters, it also felt like this story needed to be, I think, as long as it was. It almost felt like a novel, like you introduce a character, you have a twist, you have another guy, even though the Ned Leeds thing didn't really work, but like, you bring a supporting character with you and he gets killed. And it really felt like, I don't know, like, again, like we always say, like, it's almost like Spider-Man the movie. Like if you were watching a TV show Spider-Man and there was a movie, you would expect something to happen that's not going to happen in the regular book. And I feel like that's what this is. Go to Berlin and have this crazy adventure. And then the guy who's a reporter on the show as a supporting character gets killed while you're there and blah, blah, blah. So I think this is a really good issue. Unfortunately, what happens in the next few months of Spider-Man, kind of affects, our enjoyment of this a little bit. But on its own, I definitely think it's good. So with that, I definitely recommend this story. It is a standout in this 80s era of Spider-Man. Josh, do you recommend this one?
I do recommend it. I think, again, the one thing that I don't like is that Spidey is the one to kill the civilian. And I think that's a fun, interesting twist that could have been really great for this. But the whole thing for me was that Spider-Man is Peter Parker is trying to give up Spider-Man. And how does this convince him to become Spider-Man again by the end of it? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like after killing somebody, like using his powers as Spider-Man to kill someone, I don't understand how that would convince him to take on the mantle when he goes back to New York. You know what I mean? Like, it just feels counterproductive to his whole story and arc that's happening. So that's the one thing I think it feels weird for me in this issue. But besides that, I really had a lot of fun and would definitely recommend it.
See, we like to complain, or not complain, but we like to kind of poke fun at ourselves on Spider-Cast for having technical difficulties and missing episodes. We are more organized than the editorial office at Spider-Man in 1987 because, as we said, Tom DeFalco got fired, then Jim Owsley got fired, then Jim Shooter got fired, then Peter David got fired. No one knew. We talk about the inconsistency with characters, dating different people, sleeping with different people. So Spider-Man comics, even though they were being read by millions of kids, were a complete mess at the time. So that's just the nature of the beast, unfortunately. It was a commercial product. They were churning it out as fast as they could. But in the midst of that process, we got some gems. Hopefully, sometimes, right? Well, maybe not as often as we'd like. But anyway, G.I. Jolie, do you recommend this issue?
Yes. It's really good spy thrillery. It's got spy thrillery feelings and vibes. So yeah, I would recommend it. I still feel weird about the whole Ned Leeds thing. Anyway, that's neither here nor there.
It gets worse.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, I guess did you know what? I never ever want to recommend anything because it mostly sucks. But this one doesn't mostly suck. It just sucks a little. But for obvious reasons that it should suck, like people dying and not writing or art or storytelling, like the key stuff.
Bex Luthor, do you recommend this one?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was actually one of Marvel's better attempts at doing a team up. And it's hilarious that their Marvel team up no longer exists anymore because they were just like, we got it now. Does anyone else want to see team ups? I think what this does better than most team ups is that it actually incorporates both characters' motivations into one story, and it makes sense why they're kind of fighting. Every Batman versus Superman has we gotta figure out who the real big bad guy is. Whereas in this one, there's no big bad guy. They're just fighting over how they view their own morality, I guess. So that's interesting. I think it's kind of funny that Ned is dead, and this is how he died.
Very funny.
It's just
Ned's dead, baby. Ned's dead.
We went to Germany because I thought the Russian spies were after something, and then they killed me. Shouldn't have gone to Germany, my dude.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing good happens there, I guess.
All right, Jeff, what do you think? Do you recommend this one?
It's going to be the yes, but with the caveat, the exact opposite caveat for my Power Pack. If you're going to get into Power Pack, be a young kid. If you're going to get into this comic, be an old person. Maybe not an old person, but it relies on you knowing that there once was an East and a West Germany and an East and a West Berlin, and the height of the Cold War, and then the grittiness and the noirness of Wolverine, and then the sheer unadulterated existentialism from Peter throughout the entire comic, you've really got to be a mature reader to really get all the nuance of what's going on in this book. So people in our age group, but I'm saying our, and even though I'm considerably older than all of you, I think would really, really dig this comic. If I was 12 years old and I picked up this comic, no, I would not hand this comic to a 12-year-old. It's too much. The deaths are pretty gruesome in some cases, and yeah, there's just not enough there that they would get. There's too many mature themes that are going on here. So,
well, so we just experienced like you pointed out, Jeff, two extremes of Spidey comics in the 80s. One geared for kids, one geared for adults, basically. And I enjoyed them both for completely different reasons. You know, that's partly why I like Spidey. I think he kind of walks the line. He can kind of do both. But anyway. So yes, we definitely would like to thank you for joining us, Jeff. This has been a great discussion. We'd love to have you back again in the future.
By all means, I've had a great time.
All right, and I think unfortunately by the time this episode runs, you'll already have done Fan Expo. Was it Fan Expo you were talking about, right?
Fan Expo, yeah. About a week and a half ago. So yeah, that's okay. That's good.
That's too bad. So
I had a great time, everybody. It was wonderful.
Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
So many things. It was great.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely have you on again. And we want to thank G.I. Julie and Bex Luthor for joining us as usual. It was a great time. And
you're welcome. I am a gift.
And Joshua Mervell, you can take it from here.
Yeah, we also want to thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast. It really helps when you leave us a review over on Apple Podcast. You can drop us a line on Twitter at HCT Spidercast. It really helps when you let us know what you guys think about the comics we're talking about and the podcast itself. So, yeah, please keep in touch.
All right. So until next Monday, see you later.